We're excited to be joined this morning on the Oakland County MegaCast with Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson. We've had you on the show before. Welcome back to the MegaCast. Thank you for taking time to be with us.
Thank you for having me. Good to be back.
So much attention is on Michigan right now. If I am going to vote by mail, how secure is my vote?
Well, importantly, we must make sure everyone knows it indeed is very secure for multiple reasons. But at the top of line, it's secure because no ballot is counted that is sent through the mail unless it has a signature outside on the envelope that matches the signature of the voter on file. That is a time-tested key security feature that states like Washington and many others have had in place for years, where they've seen infinitesimal levels of fraud. And it also ensures, under the new law that requires clerks check in with a voter if a signature is missing or doesn't match, that we catch any irregularities and we ensure that every valid vote and only valid votes count.
We talk a lot about voter fraud, or we're hearing so much about voter fraud right now. We've had enough professors on the show here. Is this really going to be a widespread problem here in the state of Michigan?
Well, no, and it never has been. It's not been an issue in Michigan or anywhere else. And the only time we really hear about it is as a scare tactic, in my view, designed to sow seeds of doubt, wrongfully so, amongst our electorate about their vote and the sanctity of our process. The truth is, we've got a well-built election security system. When I took office, I actually launched our state's first ever election security task force, and among other things, hired our first full-time election security director. And citizens can see everything we've done to improve the security of the process and protect their vote at michigan.gov/election security, because the work is ongoing. Every day we're doing something to secure the vote. But importantly, we're talking to experts nationally and here in our state, conferring with them to implement best practices and prioritizing the security of the process every step of the way.
On that note, Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson with us on the Oakland County MegaCast. There's also been a lot of discussion in the news recently about encouragement of poll watchers at the local polls that maybe are going to be a little more intimidating than normal. What work has your office been doing with local clerks to ensure that when voters go to the polls, they aren't going to feel feelings of intimidation, but at the same time, those poll watchers who do have a right to fill that role are able to do what they feel is necessary?
Well, that's exactly right. It's an important balance to set, prioritizing transparency and making sure that interested citizens who want to observe the process have that right to do so from a designated area in a polling place where they're not permitted to speak with voters. And if anyone does cross the line and become disruptive, they'll be removed immediately. The Attorney General and I have been working closely with law enforcement at the Michigan state level, as well as all across the state at the local level, to ensure they're prepared to enforce those provisions on Election Day, because we don't want any voter to be intimidated or wrongfully treated or harassed at a precinct on Election Day when they're simply trying to exercise their right to vote.
Secretary of State for the state of Michigan, Jocelyn Benson, with us on the Oakland County MegaCast. I have a question for you, and I know a lot of other people from my social media have been asking the same thing. We keep getting the Michigan absent voter ballot application in the mail. I think between my husband and I, we've received like 6 or 8 of them over the past few weeks. I never applied for one. I'm a person, and he is as well, that we want to actually vote in person. Why is there the push to get these applications out to people? And also we're hearing about people that are getting these applications that no longer live in the state of Michigan. So what is the push, and how updated are your voter rolls? And I want to let you know, save your 20 cents. Don't mail it to us again. We're going to vote in person.
Well, let's roll it back a little bit, because our office sent out applications in May and June, and we haven't done that since. Now, a number of other groups have, and I think it's important for citizens to be aware of the difference of a mailing that comes from the state or comes from their local clerk or comes from a nonpartisan organization or political party. Now, our goal back in the spring was to ensure that every citizen had access to information on how to request to vote from home if indeed they wanted to exercise their right to do so. And of course, citizens have the option as well to vote in person or early at their clerk's office. Our job is to make sure that citizens know about those options. And certainly, we're advising and encouraging all those non-government organizations and political organizations to ensure voters are educated. But it's really, I know, challenging for many voters at this time where there's so much noise and so much rhetoric and so much misinformation coming into our state about the voting process, to have to deal with many mailings from non-government organizations to that effect. That said, applications are simply that, and no one gets a ballot unless the signature on their application matches the signature that is on file in their voter registration database. And importantly, even if someone submits multiple applications, only one ballot is sent to them. And of course, we already talked about the security provisions in the ballots themselves. So I'm proud that in Michigan, we've got a number of time-tested security provisions in place and protocols that ensures the integrity of the process. And I encourage you all to spread the truthful information, the accurate information about the process, in the light of the fact that many politicians locally and nationally will be trying to confuse voters about those very rights that we need to ensure, regardless of how someone casts their vote is counted.
So can you tell us, how are some of these third-party groups getting the voter rolls, and when were they last updated here in the state of Michigan?
Well, notably, prior to our mailing in the spring, it had been 10 years before any Secretary of State had done a mailing to update and improve the accuracy of their voter rolls. So one of the benefits of what we have done is that as we have voters comply with protocol and procedures and let us know if they receive an application in error, that actually lets us update and increase the accuracy of the rolls, which is what our staff at the Bureau of Elections has been doing with clerks for the past several months. Now, that said, voter data is public information. That is public data that is available. It's why any candidate can go into their clerk's office and get a list of those registered to vote and contact them with information about their campaign. That has happened in campaigns, for decades. So that information is public and accessible, and it's part of one of the transparency provisions of state law. But that's why we all get on lists, whether it's on a voter list or other lists that get unsolicited information. But certainly it's important to validate the source and see where it's coming from. And notably, if you get anything in the mail or see anything on social media that seems wrong, let us know, because our focus is also on correcting misinformation that we know is only increasing in frequency and volume in the weeks ahead. Misinformation@michigan.gov is an email address we have set up to help us hear from voters when they hear information that seems wrong, so that we can correct them and give them accurate information about their rights.
So just to be clear to so many of our listeners and viewers out there, if you receive an absentee ballot application for the person who lived at your house maybe prior to you, for John Smith, it's not okay for you to go ahead and fill it out and vote twice under someone else's name. Can you talk about the penalties for someone who does do such a thing?
Well, certainly that would be illegal. And that's why we encourage citizens to not break the law. And instead, if they get an application addressed to someone else, whether it comes from their clerk or whether it comes from a non-government organization, or if it came from the state back in the spring, let us know so that we can update our files accordingly. That's one of the ways we get information about when citizens have moved or passed away or are no longer eligible to vote. And of course, know that if you vote in someone else's name or forge someone's signature, we will catch it and we will investigate. And the Attorney General has already launched an investigation into a credible allegation to that end. We take that very seriously, and we want to ensure that we're protecting the integrity of the process. But certainly that shows how even if someone tries to break the law through forging someone else's name and submitting an application on their behalf, we will catch it as we have and ensure that the full force of law is met to provide accountability.
Jocelyn Benson with us. She is the Secretary of State for the state of Michigan, joining us today on the Oakland County Megacast. Jocelyn Benson, recent news, some positive news for local clerks and for the election process, allowing local clerks to begin the process of filing those absentee ballots as they're coming in without counting them. the day before the election for a set amount of hours. Can you talk a little bit about how that does help the election process move along more efficiently, and does more need to be done to make that process even more efficient, knowing that there's going to be such an influx of absentee voting in this upcoming election in November?
Well, it's certainly a step in the right direction that recognizes, this year we're going to have likely more than 3 million citizens choose to vote from home on both sides of the political spectrum. And that's what we're seeing already, is 2.5 million citizens have exercised that right in this election, for this fall's election. So knowing that, and knowing that our current law does not allow the tabulation of ballots until 7 a.m. on election day, unlike other states, those ballots cannot begin to be tabulated until then, and it was going to take more than 12 or 13 hours, or perhaps even a little bit more than that, to go through all of those ballots securely and effectively and ensure they're accurately tabulated. Now, that said, recent legislation gave some clerks in larger communities 10 extra hours on Monday to begin opening envelopes and preparing ballots to be tabulated. Again, that's a great step in the right direction, but it's not going to solve the issue of taking a long time beginning on election day to count and process those ballots. At this point, our priority is accuracy and security. We have, in some cases, doubled or tripled the number of ballot tabulators our local clerks will have in order to increase their capacity to manage and tabulate and process more ballots per hour once they're able to. And so we hope that'll improve the efficiency of the process, but we're also cautioning people to be patient as we work through and ensure that our results of our elections, once announced, are an accurate reflection of the will of the people.
We've had West Bloomfield clerk Debbie Binder on the show quite a few times. She is such a wealth of knowledge, and I was so surprised to find out that a lot of the poll worker volunteers, the ones with the absentee ballots, have to be sequestered. So in this case, that the results could take up to a week. How is that going to work with those employees or those volunteers that do need to be sequestered? I would hope they're going to be getting breaks, because I wouldn't want to stick around with you for 24, 36 hours.
Okay, let's walk that one back again too. So first of all, a lot of communities, particularly in Oakland County, where you've got the option of centrally counting those ballots, are increasing the efficiency of the process. So it's certainly not going to take a week for every community in the state of Michigan to process the ballots that are in their jurisdiction. But that said, we want to give some of our larger jurisdictions that time and set voters' expectations. Also, in case the machines break down or things occur, we want people to know that the process is working. So that said, in some smaller communities in Oakland County, it may be possible that the absentee counting board finishes even shortly after the polls close on election night. And we anticipate that will happen, as it has happened in communities all across Michigan. We're focused on the statewide total, but certainly locally as well. That process can go quite efficiently. Now, for example, in August, I think it was 9 p.m. when the centralized local absentee counting board in Oakland County was finished with their work for the election. So in addition to that, however, your point about sequestering people for a significant amount of time, the sequestering typically is only during election day itself. So from 7 a.m. or 6 or 5 a.m. on election day till after the polls close. In larger communities, there are going to be shifts where where absentee ballot election workers will come in for a second shift after that, and the original shift can go home. After the polls close, of course, they will be, at that point, have completed their work. The results will already been tabulated, and in many cases, likely already publicly reported. So there's no need to continue sequestering them, but additional people will come in to finish the work and finish the tabulation to ensure the process continues.
And I know, obviously, one of the largest community here in the state of Michigan has been Detroit. They've had issues dating back years, long before even you became the Secretary of State. And I know that Mayor Duggan this year has said, hey, we're going to help out by bringing in city employees to help with this process. But yet the mayor has an initiative on the ballot for a bond for demolition. When you look at that on the surface, is that appropriate for him to allow city workers to come in and help in this process? And could you not get volunteers from outside the city?
So again, we're going to walk that one back. So in May of this year, we began our statewide recruitment process of election workers all around the state. And in the past several months, we have recruited over 26,000 new election workers, many of whom are appointed in the city of Detroit and all across the state of Michigan. In addition to that, Detroit specifically, we estimate needs about 4,000 election workers, additional staff to staff the satellite offices, the over 20 satellite offices that will be open for the month of October, and of course, individuals to manage several shifts at the Absentee Counting Board, where we're estimating we'll need about 2,000 election workers there. And then, of course, we need to ensure everyone is trained. Now, I'm grateful to companies like DTE Energy and Quicken Loans and the State Bar Association and many others who've really been a part and joined with us in building a well-educated workforce of election workers who will be trained and ready to do those jobs. It's great also that the mayor has also said the city workers can have the day off. This is just the same thing that the mayors in many other cities, including Atlanta, have done to also provide poll worker needs or fill shortages this year. The Detroit City Clerk decides ultimately who gets placed where, and certainly every poll worker or election worker has protocols to follow to ensure the security of the process and that every vote is counted accurately. So I'm confident that as a partnership with the county, the city, many local businesses and our offices, as well as many of our sports teams. Every sports team in the city of Detroit has stepped up and offered their personnel to serve as election workers that will be able to meet the need of the city of Detroit and cities all around the state to make sure our precincts are staffed, our absentee counting boards are staffed, our satellite offices are staffed. And I'm grateful for all partners who are willing to step up and offer their personnel to support that.
So as the Secretary of State, you're not worried about there being a conflict of interest with there being such a big bond from the mayor on this ballot?
I'm not sure what you're suggesting, but at the same time, again, I just said we're working to recruit election workers all across the state. And those election workers, those poll workers are committed to ensuring the integrity of the results. We, of course, have rules against campaigning in polling places and outside of clerk's offices. And we're going to be on guard to protect that and also to protect citizens from anyone who may show up to try to disrupt the process in any way. And certainly we'll also be working to ensure every poll worker or election worker follows the strict protocols of their assignment. And we have a significant oversight in that to ensure that there's a secure process at every step of the way.
Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson with us on the Oakland County MegaCast. Secretary, just a few more minutes with you. Before we let you go, I do want to touch on other issues that people go to the Secretary of State for. They've been, of course, there have been some delays due to the backlog because of the results of the pandemic, and people are able now to go back in some capacity to their Secretary of State branch offices, and a lot of services are available online. For those that are not able to go in to the offices for those services or able to complete them online for one reason or another, what are other avenues that you suggest for them to prudently and as efficiently as possible work through the issues that they may be trying to solve or the procedures that they need to go through with the Secretary of State's office while that backlog is being addressed as this pandemic continues?
Well, certainly our offices were shut down for several months, and as a result, the legislature and the governor extended the deadline for expiring licenses and plates until September 30th. Of course, that just passed. We even extended hours in our branch offices to ensure that we were able to address that backlog, as well as other backlogs such as the renewal by mail system, which was also shut down for several of months. So according to the data, we've been able to get up and running again and have significantly addressed the backlog, in part also by creating more opportunities, as you mentioned, for citizens to have access to state services without a branch office visit. And in that regard, our partnership with Kroger and Meijer has been key. We've installed hundreds of self-service stations across the state, many in Kroger's and Meijer's, where citizens can get their plates renewed using cash or credit card. They're in multiple languages, and they can get their tabs right there. That ensures that you actually don't need to go to a branch office at all to renew your vehicle tabs in the state, and only a small portion of license renewals require a branch office visit. So for that reason, we want to encourage people to utilize the non-branch office options. We've also upgraded our mailings to citizens, so when you get a renewal, when it's your time to renew, you'll have clear information on what your options are to make the one that's best for you. Our offices, as well as we just announced today, have increased our capacity and appointments to handle appointments for new IDs or driver's licenses or replacement IDs or driver's licenses, recognizing that many citizens who have moved to Michigan want that ID when they go to vote in person this fall, and we want to make sure that everyone is able to get their ID or driver's license as efficiently as possible.
Well, thank you so much for your time. We know you're on an extremely tight schedule today. We appreciate you and your staff and really all the Secretary of State offices across the entire state of Michigan. I know they are working so hard to try to get this backlog cleared up. So thank you to you and your team for all that you're doing here for us in the state of Michigan. We wish you the best in this upcoming election.